And now time for tonight's interview to talk about Ukraine, a possibility of spring elections, U.S. and Russian pressure, and more. I'm joined by Stephen Moore, founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project. Stephen, great to have you back in the studio.
Always
Thanks for
great
coming.
to be with you.
So, peace talks for Ukraine round 3, set to take place tomorrow. If these talks do not bring any results, because Russia is actively doing anything to, but not to reach a ceasefire, why do they take place in the first place, and what is the expected outcome, considering that we've already seen some meetings take place and we had little results?
What's happened, exactly. And Putin does not want peace. Putin wants peace talks, because you notice that every time that Europe and the United States come together, or that every time that Lindsey Graham says his bill on sanctions, Russian sanctions, is got the green light to go, Putin calls Trump and says, "Well, I'm ready for peace. Let's talk." And of course, he does that, and then launches 500 drones into Ukraine and kills a bunch of civilians.
And according to the words of President Zelenskyy, there's going to be a massive attack that Ukraine is actually getting ready for in the next few days.
Yeah, I mean, this is episode 3 or more of what we've been seeing for the last year, which is that Putin talks about peace. He doesn't actually make any concessions. Ukraine is negotiating against itself right now, and then he launches attacks against Ukrainian civilians, and so Putin is not going to stop until someone makes him stop. And I think the hopeful thing that's happened recently is that Trump made India promise to stop buying Russian oil. If that happens, that's 18.
Yes.
Yeah, that's 18% of Russia's fossil fuels. 18% of their revenue from fossil fuels.
And Russia is already wondering where to send its oil.
Yeah, that's nice. It'd be nice to have that problem of having that ghost fleet of 1,000, illegal tankers filled with oil floating around the ocean with no place to go. That would be super fun. But if that happens, then that's going to be a game changer, because Putin, to get people to go fight in Ukraine, it's almost certain death to go fight in Ukraine if you're Russian. There's 1.2 million soldiers that have been lost so far by the Russians. And so to get them to fight in Russia, Putin has to pay them a life-changing amount of money. And an American entry-level soldier gets $2,000 a month. I've heard reports that a Russian entry-level soldier makes $8,000 a month. And if you consider the difference in purchasing power, it's an extraordinary amount of money. And the death benefits for a soldier, if you can find a dog tag, is about $200,000. So it cost Putin a lot of money, and if he stops getting that kind of money in, he gets a real problem.
I would like us to take a look at a discussion around Ukraine that's been going on for some time right now. The U.S. is pushing for the presidential elections to take place in Ukraine before the May deadline. This, from a constitutional and practical standpoint, is impossible, as we've learned. How do you think that President Zelenskyy is going to be able to convince the U.S. to sign the security guarantees and make the administration understand that Ukraine is not the problem when it comes to organizing the elections, because there is a will, but there is no way, because there is no ceasefire that is lasting?
Yeah, exactly. To have Ukrainians line up to vote is just creating a very large target for Vladimir Putin to kill more civilians. And so if you can't get a ceasefire agreement, then it's ludicrous to think you can have an election. And I'll tell you a couple other things. One is the polls show the Ukrainian people want a military party. They want military leadership. Certainly understandable in today's climate in Ukraine. And that group of people cannot campaign because they're at the front, right? Then the second part of it is, who's going to go be the election monitors at the front? Yeah, I'll go, but but there's not a lot of folks that are volunteering to go to the front to make sure the ballot boxes are treated fairly. So,
and I mean, considering the humanitarian situation across the country, and Kyiv in particular, when you think about basic needs of people who are supposed to go and vote are not being taken care of, how are they going to focus on who they're going to vote for?
It's a little tricky. It is. again, it's something that Putin has put out there. Putin, who, has elections, but he pushes his political opponents out of windows. Anyone out there, go Google defenestration. It's the word throwing someone or something out of a window. It's Putin's favorite English word.
I would like us to revisit the topic of the meeting, which is set to take place tomorrow. Russia is making it very clear that the territorial concessions and the discussion revolving that very subject is going to be on top of their agenda. Russia wants Donbass. They made it very clear. We know that Vladimir Medinsky, who is the chief negotiator on the Russian side, is definitely going to push for it. Do you think that Russia is going to get what it wants?
No. And there is no appetite among the Ukrainian people to give up Donbass. And we polled it. The polling shows that like 60 or 70% of Ukrainians don't want to give up that territory, depending on how you phrase it. And because the worst things in the world are happening to the 3.5 million people who currently live in occupied Ukraine. It's no secret how Putin will govern these areas, because he's already shut down every church in occupied Ukraine he doesn't control. He is, the Russian Orthodox Church has declared a holy war on Ukraine in the West, and the soldiers that follow the Russian Orthodox Church in Ukraine have taken that to heart, because they've killed 80 pastors and priests. So, it is a terrible place to live. Ukrainians don't want any more of their people under that sort of rule, and so there's no interest in doing that.
What we've covered here on the program is Russia and Moscow using the members of the Wagner Group that we thought might have been disbanded as part of their operations, especially when it comes to hybrid attacks across Europe. We've heard that in a report by our correspondent Alex Cadier. Do you think that European countries are actually equipped to deal with this sort of threat?
Well, first off, my theory is that Prigozhin's still alive, and he's had some plastic surgery, and he's doing his work elsewhere. But that's just my theory.
I'll quote you on it.
But yeah, look, this is the way they're doing it. It is amazing to me. Bart de Wever, who is the Prime Minister of Belgium, sat in a Ukraine breakfast at Davos just 2 or 3 weeks ago and said, we're not at war with Russia. Europe's not at war with Russia. And so he justified not using the $200 billion in frozen Russian assets to help Ukraine, because Belgium and Europe is not at war with Russia. That's what Prime Minister de Wever thinks of Belgium. But Putin doesn't think that. The other thing that Belgium is doing is sending enough money for liquid natural gas to Moscow every day to fund the fund 131 Shahed drones for Putin to send to Ukraine. So, when you look at this, you got to wonder, where's his head at? Where's the rest of Western Europe? It turns out, I don't know if you saw this recently, but the Indian oil, when they started purchasing all the Russian oil, the refined products were all purchased by Europe. So Russia is attacking Europe. Western Europe doesn't care. Poland and the Baltic states and the Scandinavian states, this group of northern Eastern European countries, you guys care. Poland's aware. Poland sees the brunt of these attacks. But
Poland has a diversified portfolio when it comes to energy.
Yeah. Thank you for that. But yeah, so Europe, France buys about as much LNG every day as the Belgians, as does Spain. And so, and again, there's 3 attacks by Russian drones that shut down Brussels airport. Again, 3 times. So Belgium is paying Russia to attack Belgium. It is just crazy. And someone needs to change that attitude. Europe needs to figure out it's a war.
Just before we go, because I am aware of the fact that our time is coming to an end on the program, but Herman Halushchenko, Ukraine's former energy minister, he's been charged with, let me help myself with the notes, money laundering and organized crime as part of the country's biggest corruption scandal. How do you think this corruption, this continuing corruption scandal in Ukraine is going to reflect on Ukraine, and how is it going to, are we going to see actually more prominent figures in the Ukrainian government or the structures of power that are going to be affected?
Yeah, I actually think that things are going in the right direction on that. And if you look at this, the guy was trying to flee across the border guards got him and took him back to Kyiv, and now he's in chains. That's the way it's supposed to work. And so you see a lot of that. There's scandals in Ukraine, and the scandals at our high levels, and the people are in jail. So, you know, I look in America, and, you know, the 2008 financial crisis, you know, like one person went to jail for that. And so this is the way it's supposed to work. And I think that Yermak is gone, and things are going a lot better, a lot more in the right direction. So, you know, under Yermak, the prime minister, so not prime minister, he was the former head of the office of the president in Ukraine. So, look, I think things are going in the right direction.
Thank you, Stephen. Stephen Moore, founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project, was my guest on the program. Great to have you as always. Thank you. And so this would be all for now here on World News Tonight. I'm Claudia Czerwińska. Please stay tuned for more. We have Adam Yasser coming up next, so tune for that as well.